The mystery behind spiders, okay? Why is it called a spider? Well, back in old timey, they actually made the suspension of a speaker out of really thin wood. And oh, that's right, I drew it for somebody here. Where is it at? So, that's what it looks like. Some of them had 3 arms, some of them had 4 arms, but if you draw it as 4 arm, then it's a swastika. So, and I think it was a black couple that I was drawing it for, which doesn't help my looks. So, but anyways, that's why it's called a spider. When you talk to people in other countries, though, particularly China, it's called a damper because it's considered just, the lower suspension of a subwoofer. So I wanted to show you today the differences between linear and progressive, and also flat versus cupped. So flat versus cupped are two things, separate things. So this is called cupped, and you'll some of you older guys will remember this from like MTX used these a lot, Rockford, because inside of they used really cheap stamped frames, which were made here, and they didn't really have a spider landing. So because they were kind of made for like pro audio, and pro audio is fine using this as a, if something had a 1-inch excursion, that was like called long stroke. So, but that's where this comes from. So here you can see here, this is considered semi-cupped. It's kind of dumb. Really the terms are only to describe to one speaker builder to the other. What happened in the 90s and early 2000s was companies like PPI, they always try to turn something that is a nothing into a something, or a liability into an asset, which is is common in marketing. So then they started saying like linear mirrored spiders. So what they would do is they would take linear spider. Okay, so the two differences. So there's progressive, which is where the outside is big and it progresses. Get it? Progressive. So it's big and it progresses to a small, tiny. The idea behind this is that it somehow the little things in here are more receptive to change than the big ones, but that's not how it performs. This performs the same way that like a strut on a Baja trophy truck does. Like, it doesn't give a shit, especially in a subwoofer. It just fucking moves, and it just guides it in and out of the gap, and that's it. That's all it does. And so this whole fight between linear and progressive and all this other stuff, it's all just garbage. And a lot of the Chinese, especially these college students that train over here, they laugh at us when we want to discriminate between those things. So it's just kind of dumb. But I wanted to show it to you so you guys understand what the company is describing. You gotta always remember, when a corporation is trying to sell you something, they want to make themselves look as best as possible, because they are tricking you to get the money out of you, right? That's their job. They're there to make a profit. So you have to understand that they are going to, 99% of the time, they're going to be biased, right? They think that their product's the best, even though it's probably not. Or, it's not as good as they say it is. It certainly doesn't reflect that in the MSRP. So, going on, this is a linear spider, right? Or flat spider, right? With a progressive roll? No, with a linear roll, meaning all the rolls are the same. What's the difference? Nothing. What's the difference between a flat spider and this is a semi-cupped, this is from lower to base. This has a little riser right here. And what's funny is sometimes it's not even effective because it depends on the pitch, the angle of the spider. So if it stays flat like that, yeah, it actually is a little bit of a riser, which is nice, but it doesn't really make a difference. And as far as we're being honest, here's my new 8-inch, 2.5-inch spider that I didn't design it. Actually, if you go by what the Olsen twins are, which is billionaires, they are designers, where they go to China and they go, I'll take that, and that in pink, blue, and green, or whatever. And then they put their name on it. That's what a designer is. So a designer is a chooser, a decider. So what I did was they sent me pictures of this, and I go, yeah, that's good enough. And that's what most R&D places do, because they're already made for somebody else, and China backs the factory a lot of times to expand and gather customers and get more money. So, and that's why China will always beat us on manufacturing, because that's what they do for their people. They also, there's major ponage. They don't let you do stuff, but there's always compromises. But anyways, this is our new Spider. It's a dual layer. It's kind of a coarse fabric. As far as stiffness goes, you'll see this in old like DD spiders. The Digital Designs for a while was buying those shitty spiders out of Nogales. Not that Nogales makes bad spiders, they actually make really good spiders, but in order to be cost competitive, they have to use just basically garbage, and they usually spray them with extra phenolic resin, which is just the resin used in fiberglass. That's what makes these stiff. They have special machines that like steam and inject that phenolic resin or spray it on in really exact amounts, and so you end up with a certain stiffness. But what's funny is after a little bit of use, it kind of breaks down, and the spider ends up being what it is. This one is for JL. This was probably made in Nogales, and because JL probably abandoned the tool down there, and now their spiders are made in China, which fine, that's fine, doesn't hurt anything. But they probably, instead of getting these for say $1, now they get them for like 25 cents from China. So that's why a lot of times you'll find parts like this all of a sudden sold by Lord of Base and things like that, is because the tooling that they bought, 20 years ago, has paid for itself time and time. So they, JL just kind of goes, we can put an extra 50 grand in our pocket if we just move to China for this spider. So that's why people go to China. It's not bad. It's just, you got to make sure you control, sometimes China will they'll make substitutions when they're not supposed to. So that's why, and typically China is very pushy. They want you, to spend, 10,000 a week, cause that's, they find a good client. Talk about rich bitch. You live in China and you're selling stuff to fucking fat, chubby Americans. Dude, you just got to sell one item and you're rich. It's great. So, but that's why they're pushy over there. So you want to find somebody that's patient, a little more mature. This one was from a dyer. I think this was from New Way, which was, New Way used to be an independent company, but they were bought by Loudspeaker Components, which is Neil Kirchbaum. Neil's been buying up all kinds of American companies and putting them under one roof, and he's been doing a great job. I still buy lots of supplies from him. Thank you, Neil. I did want to do a spider factory tour down in Nogales since I'm here in Arizona, but COVID. So they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, but it's Mexico. I'm like, have you been to Mexico? And they're like, no, don't go. So I was like, okay. But let's see, anything else? This is my fat with a PH, fat flat. Again, what I'm really doing is I spell it with a PH. I'm making fun of these companies like Rockford, JL, PPI, all these companies that over the years have turned a nothing into something. And what's funny is sometimes they'll even trademark it, so which costs them $1,000. But then, if anybody else uses that and calls it that, then they can sue them. So it's kind of whatever. It's the same technology that Edison came up with, and Edison probably didn't even come up with it. It was like, some goofy Mormon guy that was also probably named Joseph Smith. And Edison's like, thanks, Joe. Here's some coffee. But I just wanted to explain that to you guys. There's no SPL or anything benefit. There's also breaking in subs is kind of stupid. Back to trashing Digital Designs. They were using those really cheap spiders, and they would use like 10. It was crazy. And then what happened was they were so packed with phenolic resin that if you just started jamming on them, they would crack, they would break. And so they started that bullshit about breaking it in, which is it's kind of an old wives' tale for speaker builders. And I'm talking about speaker manufacturers, where, and I was interested in this too as I was progressing. Basically, what happens when you break in a spider, basically you're finding, you hear that? So what you're finding is all the strings in here that are too small. And what happens is once you start moving, with a woofer, it all evens out. So it's finding all the short strings and it's popping them, it's breaking them. And that's the process of breaking in a spider. Now, when you buy a subwoofer that I built, I test them, every one. So that way when you get it and you say it doesn't work, I know you're full of shit, but I test every one of them to basically make sure they work, but also to kind of abuse them a little bit to make sure that they're not going to fail, and which Lightning Audio termed torture testing, which is funny. But that's the break-in process. It takes about 20 seconds, and it's broken in. Now, does it affect the TSPs? Yes, but the TSPs are very, very accurate. Does it affect the box parameter, the box recommendation? No, it does not. So what happens in the break-in process, and this will happen over time, is does it play lower and louder? Yes, because the suspension is getting softer, right? It has a higher compliance. It's complying more. Okay, so companies like JL use a very compliant spider, which there's compromises when doing that. So your VAS is going to be larger, meaning the box required to hit FS is going to be larger. Okay, that's what happens when you have a higher compliant driver, and that's one of the reasons why older drivers typically have a higher VAS, because they weren't really built for this, super high-powered, high excursion stuff that an innovator like Tilo Stompler of TC Sounds really developed and came to market with for like over a dozen OEMs, companies or brands that he OEM'd for. So, but anyways, the compromise is that you do have a lower FS with a softer suspension, so that part's good, but your box requirement is larger, and so there's that compromise. Now, the way that you can kind of overcome this, I briefly talked about it with Kicker's Solobaric, I don't know what to call that, technology. It's not really technology. All they did was use a stronger magnet, which is the same as using two shitty magnets or two shitty motors, or even just two motors. Instead of having two motors, you just put double the magnets on it. And it's not an exact ratio, but it definitely does make a difference. And that's one way to shrink the box requirement. Now, I know some guys, some college student who's studying this will go berserk, but that's the thing, is this hasn't really been studied. And the Teal Small parameters from, I think it's Dr. Teal and Dr. Small out of Australia, who came up with these, had no imagination about high BL drivers that we see now. And so that's why Tilo actually emphasized this, about that those are what's known as small signal parameters. So, and I use, an old Win95, or no, this is XP program, and I use WT3, which is Woofer Tester 3 from Parts Express, which was $100 like, 20 years ago or whatever. Still works, it's fine. Nothing has changed, but Tilo really emphasized that that's small signal, meaning when you put just a small signal through it, that is the parameters. That's the FS, the QTS, and the VAS. Those are the three numbers you need. Now, oh yeah, by the way, I like Vice City, so I downloaded the soundtrack. It's fucking great. But what you really need to measure is the full stroke, the full bore of the subwoofer while monitoring it. And the way they do that is with a laser. They put a little dot on the cone, a little paper dot on the cone, usually white, and then the laser can see it. And then it's measuring at, whatever megahertz samples per second to understand where that dot goes and how it moves through the stroke. And then by a Doppler effect, meaning you have a given and then a variable, you can figure out, which is how the WT3 works. It does a sweep with just the woofer, and then it does a sweep with a known mass. And then if you also know the diameter of the piston, cone area, presto, you have Teal Small parameters. So, and you get to use a computer. You don't have to use the old box model method, which you can find in the loudspeaker cookbook, which is it takes a lot of time. Got to build a bunch of stupid boxes. I ain't got time for that shit. So that's for Teal and Small out of Australia. That's for those guys. They had nothing going on back in the, what is it, like 60s, 70s when they were developing this. So, other questions I'm going through my head, trying to figure out, because you guys asked me some weird shit. And I want to answer your questions, but I more want to sort of, these videos that I do, unedited, raw, it's basically like a live stream, but without you guys all commenting, is it's to share that this technology, this I don't want to call it a sport, but this hobby, or whatever you want to call it, this field of study, is not as magical as you think it is. It's actually based on really basic physics, and you guys really put too much into it. I did want to talk about BL, which is how force is measured in loudspeakers, Newton meters squared, but I'll save that for another video, but I'll discuss that. I just wanted to talk about spiders, and that there's really no difference other than when you use a flat spider, you have to be really careful that this glue edge is on the edge of the landing, because if it's not, like this one, see, like on the JL, it has to be right on the edge, because if it's got a fat ledge, it's going to touch. And sometimes you can get a clapping effect when you do that, but it's not by any design advantage or anything like that. It just happens to be, they go, okay, do a flat edge, whatever, do a progressive. A company that uses a progressive spider will tell you the progressive is better. A company that uses a linear spider will say a linear is better. They're both the same. They do the same dumb thing. Now, sometimes they'll use the nomenclature, which is the word linear, to make it sound like it's more linear, right? Which is what people think they want. They don't. And I'll talk more about that in LMS Technologies, Linear Motor System by TC Sounds. And also XBL, which is Dan Wiggins' patent, which is BL flattening technologies. I don't like either of them, but some people like them, and so I still am not a total whore, but sometimes, that's what somebody wants. I want to give it to them. So, like, if, I want a red spider. I'm like, okay, I'll give you a red spider. Sometimes I have to say no, though, right? I want to be treated with respect, damn it. Not just your whore monkey speaker guy. That's sometimes. If you're nice to me, then I will be. But, be nice to me. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Thank you.